Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show, and welcome to the greatest show in the greatest state in the greatest country in the world. And that's because we're the best place to come visit and live, work, shop, and play. And today's show is going to be based on the play part, having fun, the entertainment. And with me, I've got an entertainer, probably one of the greatest in the WCW history. I've got Diamond Dallas Page. Dallas, welcome to the show today.
Good to be on, bro. Good to be on. Where are you at? You in Miami or where are you at?
We're in the great city of Tampa,
Oh, Tampa.
and
Okay.
yeah, we're filming out of Tampa now. We were over on the East Coast, right by Jacksonville, and then Salem took the show over, and now we are broadcasted in Tampa. We've got millions of listeners. The base, we're in Sarasota, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville. Such a blessing to be with a program like this and great
Well,
station like
Florida, man. I'm sitting I'm right here. That's the Gulf of America back there. I am.
Yeah, that's right. So you don't live it now. You lived in Atlanta just like I did. You were a Georgia resident for quite some time,
Oh
but you
yeah.
just recently moved to Florida. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for starters, I still have my place in Atlanta, so I get up there. My business, DDP Yoga, is up there. My Power Cuff business is up there. But a lot of the stuff, I loved coming to Florida back when I was a kid. In the nightclub business, I lived out of Fort Myers, Florida for, about 6 years. And I just had a hell of a time down there. We had a great nightclub there called Norma Jean's Dance Club. And that's when I was transitioning from all of the nightclub stuff into wrestling. And at the time, I was too old to be a wrestler. I thought I was 31 years old. And so I became like a manager and a color commentator. And the fact that I ever pulled it off was ridiculous that it ever happened. But it did. And it finally got me to the one and only Dusty Rhodes, who brought me in as a color commentator for Florida Championship Wrestling and a manager. He also brought me into WCW for the same. In the meantime, I'd also get to meet Jake the Snake Roberts, who became a brother to me, not automatically, but over a 30-year history of us together. I don't know, have you ever seen the resurrection of Jake the Snake?
I have seen it. It's
Yeah,
amazing seeing that. I didn't
powerful.
even realize that Jake was still alive. So many people talked about the way he was going, working with him, how hard it was. You'd see videos of him come to the ring totally drunk. I thought
Ooh,
Jake
yeah,
was
bad.
gone. I thought he
Yeah,
was
well,
gone.
and you'll remember this because you were a wrestling fan throughout this. But in the 80s and the 90s, so many guys died. Like, I don't know if it was 80 or 90, at least 80 guys died under 50 years old. A lot under 40. It was like way too much. And it's mainly because the road could be really hard. Today, these guys, they do a lot of PR. They're always working, but they're not working and beating up their body and then working and beating up their body. They wrestle. If you're a top performer, you might be wrestling maybe 6, maximum of 8 days a month. We did 25 days a month, and you're going from town to town to town, and 100, 200, 300 miles to the next town. When I came into WCW as a manager and a color commentator, I didn't last 7 months because at some point, Dusty pulled me over and he's like, D, you were right. Man, it's not your fault, but the hair and the clothes and the bling and the diamond dolls and the rap and you know people they don't want to, they're taking too much of the a spotlight away. And I said, Dusty, you telling me I'm too over the top for professional wrestling? And he laughed and he said, D, we should have just put a pair of tights and boots and see if you could do this. I still was going to get to keep my color commentating job. And as a producer, I would produce interviews and all that in the back. But my whole life, I wanted to be a wrestler when I was a kid. So I had 7 months left on my contract, and I went down that power plant, and Man, whew, I can't tell you how many, probably about the first 2 or 3 weeks, man, I hit that mat, hit that mat, hit that mat. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this fake stuff hurts like hell,
Yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
know, and beats your body up. So I became like the guy, no one iced their body in professional wrestling, not their shoulders, their knees, their back, their hips, nothing. Nobody did it until I did it. And I did it because I was 35 and a half years old.
Right.
And they didn't even understand why. Like if you're in the NBA and you're one of those kids that got there at 18 or 19 years old, they make you get up on the trainer table, put the bags of ice around your knees, wrap them up. The old guys who are like 26, 27, they know, hey, yo, ice my knees. Matter of fact, ice my back too, please. You know, like icing is one of the best therapies for helping you recover from injuries. And it's where I started to learn everything about holding back the hands of time. And less than 3 months, I was in the ring and beating
Wow.
my body up and learning how to heal it as fast as possible. So it was a hell of a run. I had a Hall of Fame career, and God, who would have ever thought that was possible? But it was.
Well, now, Florida's a big part. People don't realize how big Florida is in wrestling. The WWE, uh, or yeah, did I say it right? You always
Yep,
say
you said it right.
yeah,
Yeah,
WWF.
WWE.
I always do that when Wildlife Federation had a fit about the name. It threw me off.
Right.
Um, but people don't realize Orlando is the training center for it. All these guys are going in there training, and it's very competitive, very hard to get in. Was wrestling that way back then when you went in, or was it not as popular and not as much a demand? How's it
Well,
changed?
when I started in '88, and worked for the AWA, it was hitting its crescendo, and then the steroid, stuff, and the Vince McMahon being brought in by the FBI, and I mean all of that disrupted wrestling for a while. And wrestling's very cyclical; it goes up and down and up and down. And I remember in the early '90s when I was wrestling, I never thought it would be what the '80s was, because the '80s, from probably from WrestleMania 1 on, and even before that, from 1980 on to 1987, '88, wrestling was so hot. And then, like I said, it took a stumble and it went down in popularity, but they still kept their core base fans. And then in the '90s, when we went head to head, WCW, which was owned by Ted Turner,
Yeah.
when Ted Turner and Vince McMahon, who were, billionaires, Ted had way more money at the time, but, you know, Ted wanted to buy the WWE. Back then it was the WWF, but when I'm doing interviews or whatever, you say WWE always because that's their brand now, and they don't want to get sued by the wildlife people you were talking about. But the when we went against them on the Monday Night Wars, it became must-see television. And within very, very quickly, probably within the next 3 months, over that period, we had we only had one show at that time on TNT, and Vince had the USA show, but wasn't a year later, maybe a year and a half later, we had another show called SmackDown that went on TBS. And then Vince put SmackDown, I should say, that was called Thunder on TBS. And then Vince put SmackDown, I believe it was USA again. So there's 2 days of live wrestling. Wrestling is the most, we had all of the top 4 ratings. When we were winning, it was WCW, Nitro, then WWF Raw, then WCW Thunder, then WWE SmackDown. Like, we own the cable networks. Today, wrestling isn't looked down as much as it was then. A lot of people, you know, looked at it as like lower than them, you know, and the rest, not the wrestling fans ever felt like that. I mean, think about who are the biggest stars in the world right now: The Rock,
Yeah.
John Cena, and Dave Batista.
Yeah.
They're all wrestlers. Cena's going through his last tour right now, and he came back to do that after he made himself an incredibly. John Cena's everywhere, and you
Commercials,
know,
everything. Yeah.
everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere, and so now wrestling, like they're on cue with everybody, like from Coca-Cola on out. They have sponsorships from everyone. Everybody wants to be involved with wrestling, mainly because of the affiliation more than anything. Netflix, which the only thing that's bigger than Netflix is YouTube. And Netflix it's not ABC or NBC or CBS anymore. It's Netflix. And you know, they are a juggernaut, and they paid billions of dollars to get the WWE on their programming. So, today, I wouldn't say it's hotter than it was when we were wrestling every night. Not every night, but 25 nights a month. Um, but it's bigger. It's bigger today because
More
it's
exposure.
really the world now. I
Yeah.
mean, they sold out Berlin in like 22 minutes. They sold out Paris, in like 18 minutes. So these fans are, everything's a live show though too. Unless they're over in Europe, they might do a couple of house shows, which means there's no cameras. But the bottom line is wrestling is as hot as it's ever been, you know?
Back in the '90s when you were talking about with WCW, you guys were amazing. I mean, WCW. I didn't even watch WWE or yeah. Let me make sure I get it right. WWE. I
Hey,
didn't even watch it.
hey,
I was WCW. It was part of seeing Hogan come over to it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my god, y'all just took his major guy. When you work with Bischoff versus working with others, how creative and how what did you see made the difference for him with that?
me and Bischoff were super tight. Um, we got in a pull apart fight in the AWA when we were working there. And then when he came in to be a color commentator, he was coming in, I should say, I was a color commentator, like the fourth string, and he came in as a play by play guy. And I helped him get that job. And because I really respected him, a lot. And he very smart guy, very 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 smart guy, and he had a vision. He had a vision for the company. Like he once he signed Hulk and then got Randy, who were two of the biggest names of all time. God rest their soul. He saw eventually the Monday Night Wars, and it wasn't there yet. We didn't have it yet, but him and Ted Turner together decided they were going to go head to head with WCW, I mean with WWF at the time, and to really think about doing that because they were so much up the ladder than us. We were like the redheaded stepchild, but that was all about to change because Eric Bischoff formed the NWO, and the reason why it got so over because it was reality based. And when you can blur the lines, and that's what people love. You watch a movie and you get pulled in by the acting. You don't get to hear, cut, do it again,
Right.
cut, do it again, cut, do it. No, it's live. It's like theater, except for if you're in Phantom of the Opera, you're going to say the exact same lines and do the exact same spots, that you're going to go to every single time. With wrestling, it's always different. And
Now,
that's another thing that makes it so hot.
now, Dallas, how did your how did DDP come about? Now we know Hogan was helped created by McMahon. How did your character come about? Because you were one of the hottest ones at that time period. you'd come out and disrupt more stuff. It was amazing watching it.
Thank you. It was a great run, but it took 6 years to be an overnight success. Like people would say, God, it's just like you came out of nowhere.
You did.
It's
You
like,
did. It
no.
that way.
Yeah, but the whole time I was working and they wouldn't really use me in any high profile, you know, matches or anything because they didn't think I had the ability to draw or to connect with the people. Because a lot of people, they see wrestling or they get involved and they think that doing the moves, and I know the same way, when you're learning how to fall, just fall. Anybody just try and fall and see how that feels. Because you're going to try to protect yourself, and if you don't fall right, you're going to seriously injure yourself. And so for me, learning the moves, I thought it was the hardest thing I'd ever done until I got out in front of the people and it was live. Then you realize, oh, learning those moves, that was the easy stuff. How do you make the people care? You see, like, this is a fun little thing I do, but before I'd walk out in front of 22,000 people, I know that they know, and they know that I know, and I know that they know that I know that me and my opponent know who's going to win before we walk out there. How do you make them care? And connecting with the people, that's the secret. And I learned a lot from the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. I learned a lot from Jake the Snake Roberts. They taught me, that you got to believe it. Like, even though it's a show, like, even though whether it's Bruce Willis or whoever the actor is, Julia Roberts, if they're thinking about something else while they're reciting their lines and they're not connected to them, you're not going to care. But if she's connected to it or he's connected to it and they believe it's happening. Because what they're doing, I'm a trained actor myself and not as good as those guys, but pretty good. And I know how to connect to the material. Like Diamond Dallas Page, my real name, before I changed it to Dallas Page over 28 years ago, my real name was Page Joseph Falkenberg. And I knew that name was never going to draw money in the world of professional wrestling. So I created Diamond Dallas Page and it had a backstory. And the character evolved over years. And what I can tell you is when Page Joseph Falkenberg stopped trying to be this bigger than life wrestling persona, Diamond Dallas Page, when Page Joseph Falkenberg stopped trying to be Diamond Dallas Page, and Diamond Dallas Page started to take on the characteristics of Page Joseph Falkenberg, my career took off like a rocket. And it's just about being true to yourself, and bringing the guys who really get over are the guys who are an exaggeration of themselves, meaning that they build that up to be superheroes. First of all, people can't believe there's nothing fake about wrestling. You can't fake gravity. It's predetermined, but so is the movies. So are the plays. So is professional wrestling. It's like we grab your emotion and right when you think this is absolutely going to happen, it doesn't, and that happens. And that's the beauty of professional wrestling.
Well, you talk about a great example is when Hulk Hogan became a bad guy. Did you
Ooh,
guys anticipate that taking I mean, that night I'll never forget watching as WCW went off. They just destroyed they were throwing stuff. It was
oh,
one of the
there's
worst
so much
things
stuff.
I've seen. Well, did you guys expect that?
You're hoping for it. You know what I mean? You're hoping for it, but you don't know till you start doing it. And the way Hulk laid in, like he wasn't the red and yellow, eat your vitamins, say your prayers. Hulk Hogan that everybody had seen for, God, close to 20 years at that point. Um, he was this Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And he's been in Hollywood, you know. He friggin' had a pretty good run. I wouldn't have put him up in the category of The Rock or Cena or those guys because those guys have done some A-plus work. But Hulk was he was as big as it got. And um, where you really tell the story is what happened the next day at Turner Sports. Their phone lines lit up like it was a Christmas tree. I mean, people were so pissed off because now their child is hysterically crying because those kids have been connected to him, you know, pretty much since they first, you know, could watch a wrestling match. And so all these kids were anywhere from between the ages of 5 and 12 lost their minds. And that's where you knew, oh, wow, this is going to really draw money because it's, you know, very controversial. And again, all he did was freaking say, I'm done. Because a lot of people were getting, you know, the yellow and red Hulk Hogan was a little long in the tooth at that time. But when he flipped it, it was like a rebirth. And between Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, man, those guys went through everything. And then we were winning the ratings every single week. Like we smoked them and almost put Vince out of business. And when you ask me about Eric Bischoff, he's that creator of all that. I'm the one who made the calls to Scott and Kev because they were both like family to me. And I used to manage Scott Hall and created that whole look when he went from Big Scott Hall to what would become the Diamond Stud when he worked with me in WCW. But that's who Razor Ramon. Like this was the beginning of what Razor Ramon would be. And and Kevin and I tag teamed together until I tore my rotator cuff and Cowboy Bill Watts let me go. And then me and Jake the Snake Roberts, you know, spent a year straight together pretty much. And he taught me so much as we would go from Singapore to the Philippines to, you know, the UK. I mean, we traveled all over the world wrestling, and he taught me a lot. So I was very, very fortunate, you know.
You know, Dallas, we're at the top of the hour here and we've got to wrap it up, but I'd love to have you come back on for come back in and talk again because there's so much more. You've just opened up so many more conversations and things. Uh, would love to have you come back on, but
All right, well, I'll tell you what, I want you to do this. I got a new show. Are you familiar with Tubi?
I am.
Tubi, a big streaming service. The thing is, they're growing like crazy because it doesn't cost anything to go on Tubi, but there are commercials. But they're like 14 seconds. I thought for sure they were going to have like at least 2 minutes of commercials each break. But I have a new docuseries that's up there right now that shows what I'm doing. I didn't say reality show because reality shows are wrestling is way realer than reality shows. Let's put it like that. And wrestling is probably the first reality show, really. But I have a new docuseries that's up there on Tubi, and it's called Change or Die. And bottom line is, it's very moving. You'll never believe what happens at the end. It's actually also a showcase for my DDP yoga to be able to show people that it's not just a workout, it's not just the eating plan, it's a mindset, and it's, you know, all about owning the story you tell yourself. And so go. In the meantime, you go to Tubi, pull up Change or Die. Watch it. There's 9 episodes. Love to see. I would love to hear if it grabs you with the binge watching, because that's that's what everybody wants when they have a show like this up that you can't stop watching. Like a lot of times when I'm doing that, I'll go to the middle, like I'll get through that hook and I'll go, if I got to go to bed, I will go into it in about 10 minutes and then hit pause before it had a chance to pull me if it's a show that I really like. But yeah, check out Change or Die.
Guys, I want to thank you for joining us. Dallas Page, I want to thank you for joining us today as well. Change or Die on Tubi. You've got to watch it. You got to check it out. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to check it out. And then when he comes back on, we'll be able to talk a little bit about it. Can't wait to hear it. I've heard a lot of good things from the people that have watched it. Remember, live, work, shop, play, Florida. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next weekend. Have a great week.